Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Shiming. I'm a postdoc currently at the UF, University of Florida. It's nice to be here and then present my research, effects of perceived economic contribution on individual preference for environmentally friendly residential landscape. This is a paper that I did with my professor, Dr. Haik. This paper is regarding that how the perceived economic contribution on the preference, on the household preference for the we call low import or alternative landscape. So let's getting started. As you know that the traditional residential landscape usually dominated by the turf grass, right? So it's I mean, almost 100% of the turf grass lawn, that's the, let's say the culture or the norm, especially in the state of Florida. Usually this causes improper practice. You know, for example, like excessive irrigation and excessive fertilization. And then we all know this will cause the unintended, environmental impacts or the, negative consequences. Like we have running out of water resources, and also like cause the pollution, contamination, no matter that the chemical runoff or fertilizer runoff directly impact our water body. I just show you a picture quickly. So this is a picture we took, like 2 years ago. So this is the Lake Okeechobee. As you can see, the size of the algae bloom. We cannot say this is solely, because of the irrigation landscape practice, but we understand that this is a major contribution, right? So let's say that the government, water management districts, they are trying to find the solution. So far that in Florida, we have so-called a Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, promote or encourage homeowners or households to transfer that turf grass lawns to the low input landscape. In general, that we want to transfer the turf grass lawns to a turf grass and landscape bed combination, switch from the pure turf grass lawns to a turf grass with the plants combinations. In this case, we can, we consume less imports, and then water, and then also like the fertilizers, and then also like this new or the alternative landscapes will contribute or give the essential support for the local ecosystem. All right, there are many benefits, environmental benefits behind that. Although we know that this is a ideal situation, convince household to transfer or transform their landscape to a, let's say that the low input landscape. But usually it's not that easy, right? In the previous research, we found that some factors, for example, the economic benefits, and then the incentive, for example, like the rebate, can encourage alternative landscape adoption. But there is still a big question mark. What about the perception of the economic, that we call this economic value added benefits? Or let's say we just simply call it economic contribution of the landscape. Regarding the value added benefits, usually this is not what we can observe. This is more like a bell in that the homeowner's mind. We want to know a little bit more that how the perception will affect their landscape preference. If it is significant and then positive, we know that the economic contribution oriented information, first of all, we give them the information. And then the second of all, we try to, let's say that improve their perception regarding this value added benefit. And then we will gain more confidence that, in the landscape conservation program to convince homeowners to transfer their landscape. Based upon the research questions developed, and then we set the objective. The general idea is to investigate the effects of this perceived value added benefits. The objective is that that if we providing them additional economic information, that whether this will influence their preference, landscape preference or not. And then the second objective is that the individuals perceived value added benefits, their perception will influence their willingness to pay for those landscape attributes. We confirm this hypothesis, those hypotheses, and then that we can get more confidence, in our landscape conservation program. We conduct a online survey. We use the choice experiment approach. I think most of you already know a little bit about the choice experiment. We just give them the different choice regarding that we have alternative A landscape, alternative A landscape, alternative B, and then we give them a not choose option as C, and then ask them to choose the one they most preferred. So the attributes including that the installation, or we call that the cost of transformation, right? And then we have the landscape design regarding the turf grass and then plant proportions, as a percentage. For example, we have 25% plants, and then the 50% plants, or the 75% plants, or 100% plants, okay? So meaning that the turf grass is in a reduced order. And then that we including the return of investment as a, economic, let's say that the economic indicator. And then also we included the pollinator attractive, habitat or not. And then that the irrigation system, whether it's a smart irrigation system. And then also that we have this the so-called the maintenance requirement level. So they are including low, medium, high. So those are the attributes we included for this alternative landscape. We use one of, like say, the treatment group. We give them the economic benefits information regarding that how much that can save your water, your the bills, monthly bill, and then also how much that the alternative landscapes will adding value. All right, and then that we collect their perception, the perception including whether they agree there is the value added benefits. That's what is the level that let's say the respondents perceive to add it to the property value as the percentage. All right, those questions we collected in the following survey questions. After collecting the data, I used econometric models, including a mixed logic model, and then a let's say a system, let's say that we call the seemingly unrelated regression model. We do the regression on the individual level willingness to pay. Quickly, let me just summarize the results we have. Interestingly, that we find something that not in line with our expectation. So first of all, that we have the economic benefits treatment group, information treatment group, and then the control group. The results show us by simply give them the economic benefits information, there is no effect or there is no influence on the participants' preference. We did that, to test or whether they have different, preference or willingness to pay for those landscape. But the result that we found that the economic benefits information, really not that significant to change their preference. So as a result, I just present to you the overall, the willingness to pay. Not separate them into two groups. Take a look at that. We set the plant 25% as the baseline. See that the homeowner, the household, that they prefer, they are willing to pay $154, for the plant 50%. They more prefer a little bit higher, that the plant, let's say, bad. Once we have increased the proportion of plants, that their willingness to pay decrease. Especially for the 100% plants, the homeowners or the household, they show extremely, the negative value, meaning they are not willing to pay for that design. And then all the rest regarding that the return of investment, and then regarding the pollinator friendliness, and then also the smart irrigation, and then also regarding the maintenance, level, that we all see this is a positive. Meaning they are more they still prefer, those, let's say that we call the environmentally friendly landscape design attributes, but we needed to be very careful regarding those, high percentage of plants. Although we are trying to promote the alternative landscape, but we needed to be careful, the percentage of plants with the turf grass, okay? In addition, regarding the individual willingness to pay, we did the regression. The idea is to see that on the individual level, how their perception of value-added benefits will influence their willingness to pay. Also, interestingly, that we found that the perception of the value-added benefits, or simply VAB, this only affects those landscape design attributes, but not other attributes. For example, like those maintenance requirement, not affect the smart irrigation attributes, not affect the pollinator friendliness attributes, only affect the landscape design attributes. There are two major findings we get. First of all, if the household agree there's a value-added benefits, because they perceive there is the value-added benefits, this will increase a lot regarding their willingness to pay for the prompt 50 and prompt 75%. Those are the two landscape design. But regarding 100% prompt design, we see that this is a negative, value, meaning they, even they perceived it, there is the value-added benefits, but they still not willing to pay. All right, not willing to pay money for this landscape design. And then also specifically, if they are showing that if the higher, if they perceive the higher level of value-added benefits, I mean, in this case, is how much, 5% or 10% more you think it's added to your property, and then this will, let's say, that correlated with their willingness to pay for this, this specific landscape design attributes, meaning that the higher perceived the level, they will more prefer or more willing to pay a premium for that, landscape design. In general, like this is the result is quite convincing, meaning that if we perceive that is the value-added benefits, and then that we will see the positive, let's say the positive willingness to pay, but only for prompt 50% and prompt 75%, not for the prompt 100%. Okay, so and then if we have higher, level of value-added benefits, and then they are more, they're adding more money or adding more, willingness to pay for that attribute. So this research, we found that first of all, this perception really does affect the preference for the low import landscape. This is one takeaway. And then also that we found, if we providing simple economic benefits information, it's very unlikely to influence their preference. But we need to really consider, rather than providing the information alone, we needed to combine, or we call it synergistically, incorporating the economic benefits information together with the environmental, benefits information. The idea is to not only give the information, but to trying to convince them, to really, to buy in the message, to buy in the information, all right, regarding not only the economic, benefits, but also the environmental benefits. Once we can improve their perception, especially the perception of the value-added benefits for those, low import landscape, very likely we will increase the likelihood of this, that the low import landscape adoption. Eventually, we will achieve the target of our landscape conservation program by, transforming, or let's say convincing the household to transform them turf grass, and then we can, eventually that save our water resource, and then also prevent those negative environmental, impact. So thank you very much for your time. And then that if you have any questions, that Dr. Heike will be available and then to take your question. Sorry for not being available today, and then I have another meeting that at the same time. I wish you a great day, and then see you next time.